Okay, so normally I do an introduction on my videos, but on this occasion, I have my dear friend Alan Hines here visiting, and I've invited Alan for years to come here. And every time I go to LA, I go and hang out with Alan.
With bigger people. Oh. He comes out and hangs out with me.
I come and hang out with Alan.
You do.
And Alan's one of my favorite guitar players in the world and a dear friend. I can't believe you
that.
actually...
I'm honored that you feel that way, and it's feelings mutual. I think we got along right off the bat. And do you remember when I first met you, how we met?
Wait, how did we meet?
It was late one night in a bar, Rick.
That's not true, Alan.
When you did a thing on Joni Mitchell, who was one of my favorite all-time artists. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit at some point. But you did a thing on her, on I think it was Hijera, on Amelia.
Yeah.
And you tore it apart exactly how I would have done it. Because when I think of that song, I think about all the stuff that everybody added to that track. I mean, all the musicians were like jazz trained who added stuff, and every playing, there's no utilitarian playing on there. Everybody's like adding creative stuff.
Yes.
So I remember when you did that, I said, man, I got to tell him. So I wrote a comment, and you wrote me back like immediately, and you said, oh, I'm a fan of your guitar playing.
That's right.
I said, what? Who, me? So anyway, so we became friends, and then we've stayed in touch ever since then. And we have a lot of mutual friends.
We have many mutual friends.
Yeah.
So Alan, talk about what you do. You.
What do I do? I was a student at MI. I grew up actually close to here, close to you. I grew up in Georgia and Alabama. And then, in the greatest era for guitar players, because everything on the radio was guitar, of course. So I was listening to Joni Mitchell and Steely Dan. I could figure that stuff out, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was just playing by ear. So I went to Berkeley, and then I went to MI, Musicians Institute, in '85. And that was also a golden year to be at Musicians Institute because there were so many great people there. I mean, you could walk down the hallway and there was Jennifer Batten and Frank and Bolly and Scott Henderson and Robin Ford and Joe DiOrio and Joe Pass. I mean, it was crazy then.
Yeah, everybody. That was the best time.
It was the Mecca. It was like everybody wanted to go there, and everybody kind of knew each other. It was only about maybe 100 students there at the time. But I won a scholarship through Guitar Player magazine that enabled. I got to go there for free. At the time, a year of MI was $2,400.
That was it.
That's how it cost to go to school there in 1985. So I went there, and then I just kind of learned, several embarrassing moments through my life. I think my most accelerated learning was when I was most embarrassed. Like when the teacher comes out and asks me, what are the notes in the C-sharp minor 7 flat 5 chord? I just kind of froze. I went, C-sharp? And the girl next to me kind of goes, C-sharp, E-G-B. So I realized, so I ended up having to catch up, and a lot of those happened. I had some great stories auditioning for Jean-Luc Ponty when I just completely folded and had told everybody about it and had to relive the experience for the next 6 months. So you learn a lot. So I learned a lot in that concentrated year studying. I'd go and sit with Robin Ford every day because he was there 1 week out of every month.
Okay.
So he was kind of a mentor.
And everyone came through and did concerts as well. People that weren't just like...
They're famous for that. Yeah, they had Metheny and Steve Morse. Holdsworth was there pretty regularly. Everybody who was anybody at the time.
Jeff Buckley was one of your classmates, right?
Jeff Buckley and I were pretty good friends. Well, we were, he was 10 years younger than I was. But at school, all the better players would kind of hang out, if I want to call myself one of the better players, but all the players who we thought were hot at the time, we would all kind of hang out. And Jeff and I became pretty good friends. And we worked at the same place. I can't remember if he got me the gig or I got him the gig at the Magic Hotel. And we both worked the night shift at the Magic Hotel in Hollywood, a little boutique hotel with a lot of celebrities and screenwriters.
That's where you have to be a magician to get in, right?
Not a magician. That's the Magic Castle.
Okay.
And there's like a little hotel next to it. So I remember Chris Isaacs stayed there when he was just getting famous, and he used to come in there. I used to see him there. And Jeff and I would work there the night shift. We worked there 11 o'clock to 6 in the morning.
What would you guys do?
We'd just check people in.
Oh, okay.
And we'd sit there and practice.
You were like playing there.
Well, no, we had our guitars there with all the music from school, and we were like practicing till daybreak. Okay. It was just we both used it as a time to practice.
And Jeff was more of a guitar player than people realize, right?
Much more, yeah. I mean, at the time he hadn't, and maybe he had started writing songs by this time, but we didn't hear them. He hadn't started singing yet.
Okay.
So he was only 18 years old. But the thing we had most in common is that we could both play over chord changes pretty well, but none of us really wanted to be a jazz. I mean, we didn't really want to be a Joe Pass. We just kind of wanted to understand it. And we both had a big affection for Led Zeppelin, which we both shared that. And he had a great sense of humor. I mean, he was a super smart guy. I mean, what I remember, because people ask me all the time about, even my young students now go, Jeff Buckley? Why, yes, I did. I like to take pride in that. But the thing about Jeff I remember most is how he could, when he would speak, it was, he would speak really softly, and you would lean over because you wanted to hear more. I kind of use that analogy for a lot of music these days because it's like I wanted to entice people and to make them lean forward instead of just blasting them with a lot of notes and a lot of volume. You know? And Jeff was really, he was really smart, and he was really super funny. And he had a little, you know, kind of a little, not a dark side, but he had a serious side to him too, even at age 18. And that was probably just the other genius that was to come out, you know, 10 years later when he moved to New York and stuff. But at the time, we used to just, you know, we'd see each other in the hallway and we'd go, hey man, come here, look at this lick I learned last night. And he'd show me a Schofield lick and I'd show him a Holdreth lick and vice versa. And we played a lot together. I remember one in particular concert we were doing. It was me and Jeff Buckley and Jeff Berlin, because Jeff Berlin was teaching there, and he knew that we were, you know, we were the hotter players, I guess. We're jamming on Footprints. I remember the song, and we were in one of the performance rooms, and it started to fill up because it was a good jam session, as you can imagine. I mean, Jeff Berlin was great, and we were playing all of our, you know, 2-5 licks or whatever we had learned in class, you know, and started to fill up, and then all of a sudden Jeff looked up and he stopped. After I said, Jeff, what happened? He goes, I got nervous. Which is crazy to think, because he became, you know, he just found himself.
He became Jeff Buckley.
He became Jeff Buckley. And I just love his stuff, because you can hear, I think it was Jimmy Page was talking about his unique chord voicings and how he also thought that Jeff had tuned to weird open tunings, but he didn't. He just knew a lot of cool chords.
He listened to a lot of Alan Holdsworth.
Exactly. He knew a lot of wide intervallic stuff, and he liked the dissonance, you know. He liked stuff that tweak your ear a little bit. But yeah, he was a kid. And another story about Jeff really quick is in his performance. When we graduated, we all had to do performances. And he did one. He had this Ovation Les Paul that he wore up to about here, you know, and Ovation Les Paul copy. And he did D-flat waltz, the Weather Report song. Yeah. And all the keyboards, all in all parts, he did stabs on the guitar, like doing like all the harmonics. And by then I'd become friends with Scott Henderson, so we were out in the audience watching Jeff. It was amazing. And Scott was sitting next to me going, who is this guy? Who is this guy? How come he never came in my class? And because Jeff was shy. And of course we all said, because you're an asshole, Scott. We didn't say that. We said, because Scott's very, you know, it's kind of a rite of passage to go sit with Scott Henderson at that time to be able to play over Giant Steps or some Wayne Shorter.
Okay, but who was the best guitar teacher there? Who was like, as far as the most fun guy or the person you learned the most from?
Well, Scott, and probably Robin Ford, as far as good. Joe Diorio. Joe Diorio was like...
Let's talk about Joe for a second.
Yeah.
People don't really know Joe.
We called him.
Joe Diorio is one of the greatest players ever.
You know what made him great is that he had this... he had that kind of, well, he wrote a book called Right Brain Guitar or something like that. And it was about using the other part of your brain just to be creative. In other words, he would just throw a wrench. He'd go, okay, I'm going to solo now over Giant Step, but I'm going to use all triads, or I'm going to use all this interval, or I'm not going to use the G string. He would just like throw something that maybe wasn't inspired musically at that second, but it was just kind of a crazy idea to see if he could do it, to challenge himself. He was great at doing that. And when he was on, it was like, nobody was better. And he was a sweetheart. I remember him. He did a concert there with Pat Metheny that just blew us all away.
Oh, yeah.
Because we'd never really seen Joe in action. We saw him sitting behind his desk, and you'd come in and you'd play a lick for him. He'd go, and he had like one weird eye. He had one crazy eye. He'd, and then he'd sit there, he'd write it down, you know, and he'd mimeograph everything. He had a big file cabinet of everybody's licks and stuff. But he was fun. We used to have lunch all the time together because I was, you know, one of the students who could cover some of the chord changes, and we used to go. And he was just a wonderful guy. You know,
and Metheny was very influenced by him too.
I think he studied with him down in Miami. I think when they were down there, sure.
Yeah, because Joe is all those kind of wide interval things.
And Joe knew Jaco very well. Actually, Jaco's one of the last times he did a workshop was at MI when I was a student. Actually, there's a video of that, and you can hear me standing up in the video, Mr. Pastorius, you know, asking a question, because everybody was asking stupid questions like, "What kind of picks do you use?"
So you decided to ask one too, then, Alan.
So I thought I'd ask a stupid question too, which I did. Actually, I didn't let anybody down there.
What kind of strings do you use?
No, what kind of picks do you? No, I said to him, I said, I thought this was an okay question. I mean, I just phrased it wrong, but I said something to the effect of like, of all the great recordings you've done, which ones mean more to you? And he goes, excuse me? And when he said, excuse me, I automatically just like, the spotlight was on me, I shrunk. And I said, well, I mean, you've done so many great things with the Weather Report and Joni Mitchell. Did any of them mean any more to you than others? Or something like that. And he goes, look, I got 4 kids and I love them all the same. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Jaco. Thanks, Jaco. Thanks for playing, Jaco. So, but anyway, I saw him back.
Alan has so many stories like this.
But after the concert, I went backstage and he was there. He was already pretty sick. You know, I mean, he was kind of slumped over, and I saw him we spoke for a second in the hallway with Joe DiOrio, who was hanging out. And I mean, even then, he picked up somebody else's Yamaha bass, whatever they had at the school. He didn't have his bass there. And it had strings up to here. I think it might have even been a school bass. And he still played great, But yeah, that was the lucky thing about being in MI at that time, because there was just so many, guitar was still why everybody went to that school. And there was so much stuff. Everybody aspired to be the Larry Carltons, the Robin Fords. Robin was a big influence. I used to sit with him like every day. I knew all his licks already. And we used to sit there, and and he's actually quite good at playing over chord changes. He doesn't get enough credit for that, but I wish he did more of that. I mean, my personal favorite stuff he did was Monmouth College Fight song. Absolutely. So I've told him that before. I said, Robin, this is the shit. And he goes, yeah, I know. He goes, and I suppose he learned that song that afternoon. He and Russell Ferrante were sitting in the back going over the chord changes, and he just came out. He said, I was flying by the seat of my pants. But man, is that a beautiful solo. I mean, that's one I always point to for, you want to know how to build a solo? I mean, there's a couple diminished runs which are questionable. Who cares? It's just like the overall feeling and intent is there. And so that was probably Robin Ford, but I have to give a shout out to one guy who I thought about on the way here too, and he was a piano instructor at our school named Carl Schroeder.
Okay.
And he wasn't a household name, but he had toured with Sarah Vaughan, and he was just a great, like Leonard Bernstein was like a great teacher. When you would talk, you just want to hear him speak. He told me one time he made more money. He was the hand in Name That Tune. Remember the TV show? Yeah. The show zoom up with a hand on the keyboard. You go dun 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 dun, or whatever you try to name that tune. That was his hand. He said he made more money doing that than he ever did on any gig in his life. He kind of formed that whole school of the what MI was at the time, because he introduced us to all these maybe more modal or maybe a little more modern jazz things besides just learning.
Alan, it was called GIT at the time, though, correct?
That's right. There's only GIT, BIT, and PIT. There's no KIT yet.
When did it become
KIT
MI?
And VIT and all that stuff?
No, when it became,
I think it was MI when it was bought by the Japanese Mr. Shibuya, who owned Schecter guitars and all those ESP, all those guitars. And then it just started changing. Like music, they tried to adapt to the times. All of a sudden they had a rock curriculum where you could get in, and guys would come to school in makeup and their parachute pants and their hair all done up, ready for class. And I don't know, it's good and bad. You got to keep up with the times, but a lot of times they get into graduating students who didn't, we used to call it, you get their receipt, not their diploma. But it kind of changed, and through the years, and it's still a great school. I mean, I think they've changed it now, but I think now the biggest class there is something like artist development or some kind of production thing, and it's not focusing on the guitar world anymore like it used to.
Okay,
but Scott's still there, and I'm still there. A few good teachers there.
Let's talk about this guitar that you're playing, Alan, because it's not a Telecaster. What is it?
There's a Japanese company that you guys probably know. Exotic makes mostly pedals, and the guy Kiyoshi who runs that company he's the designer of all the pedals. He used to work at Full Tone. So all the old Full Tone pedals, like the OCD stuff, he designed those. So they started their own company called Exotic, and I've used their pedals just because it sounded good. And they saw me at the Baked Potato one night, and I was using their AC pedal. I think they have weird names, the AC and BB. I don't know what they really stand for. But they started making guitars several years ago. It's kind of changed through the years. And this one they copied I have a 52 Esquire, which is my holy grail, my go-to comparison of all things Telecaster, because the 52, the pickups were just wonderful on those old guitars. So they copied mine exactly. The dimensions, the weight.
Even the neck, all the wear on the fingerboard?
Calipers. Not that, even though mine is like completely black on my 52. It's completely petitaed out. But they're solid guitars. I think they're one of of all the companies that make, how do you compete with Fender and Gibson? They're so huge. But Exotic stuff is real solid, and it's really great quality, and the customer support is great, and I love their stuff.
Guitar sounds amazing.
It does sound
good.
When
Alan just set up and started playing, it sounds fantastic.
I went through several pickups, and because I helped them kind of choose the stuff, and once again I was comparing it all to the old stuff. People ask me all the time about how tone and stuff, that kind of stuff, and to me it's like if you can get a good tone on the treble pickup with your fingers, that's a lot of, then I kind of am in the right ballpark.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then if there's too trebly or it's too, they overwind pickups just to make them hot and exciting or something. But and there's certain guitar players I know that are more sensitive to that, to the caressing of like guitar. You know, if I give it to, you know, something like Mike Landau or Robin Ford, he's going to pick it up and he's going to play soft little voicings, you know, see what the guitar will do. You know, as opposed to just cranking it through a bunch of pedals and playing really loud, you know. So that's where I begin getting a good sound, and the exotic stuff is great. Their quality control is awesome, and they've been good supporters. I mean, they've taken me to Japan a few times a year for the last 20 years or so.
You want to play one of your songs?
Sure.
Talk about this song, Alan, that you're going to play.
Following up?
Yeah.
My hit?
And we joke about this, about his hit. Alan has there's millions of versions of people playing this song. How did that happen?
At MI, I do this thing called open counseling, which we just sit in a big room and show off pretty much. And kids come in. I used to have one of those old Boss Dr. Rhythms or Dr. Sample or whatever, and I had, I think it was a stylus loop of some sort, maybe like an Abraham Laboriel Jr. loop or something, and I just put it on. And I was writing songs. I had this one song, and I'd taken it home. I put some other tracks to it, so I brought it back, and I had the track, and when I was just in the Genesis working on the chord changes, and then one of my students says, "Oh, that's a really cool chord change. Can I have the backing track so I can take it home and practice?" I said, "Sure." And then, lo and behold, like 20 years later, I keep hearing all these versions of the song on YouTube, and it's all these kids in Thailand or wherever, you know, auditioning for music school, and the backing track is me. It's like me playing all these guitar parts. I go, "That's funny." So I found it. One kid gave it to a backing track company, I guess, or sold it to them or did something, but they got it. So everybody goes to, I think it's Bob's Backing Tracks, and they can buy it for $7, and it's...
Where's your cut?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's flattering, but it's just kind of frustrating, you know. The whole music world, which you've done enough episodes on the music business, but that's why it's out there. And so most of the tracks you hear, it's me playing in lieu of keyboards, because I can't play keyboards. I'll layer a lot of slide stuff or do a weird tuning and do a drone. Jeff used to do that a lot. Led Zeppelin did that a lot. You know, a lot of backing tracks where there's acoustic guitars and there's, you know, me hitting a cardboard box or whatever, just get a certain sound, whatever to get a vibe happening. So that track is like all me. But Jimmy Johnson eventually played on this track, but I think I'm not sure if he's on those tracks.
It's you and Jimmy and a stylus loop, basically.
And a stylus loop, yeah, basically. But yeah, no, it's a fun song. It's one we still do live because everybody knows it, and it's just easy enough for everybody to play the melody because it's a simple, stupid melody, and the changes are the chord changes are the hard part, I think.
Okay, so anyone that's watching this, when you hear Alan play this, put it in the comments if you actually have heard this song or know this.
Thank you.
Alan,
Atlanta.
that sounds killer.
Well-
okay, so how do you get all these beautiful legato things that you do? And you combine so many different styles.
Well, we used to do lots of mushrooms back in Alabama. No. I don't know. You know, I mean, a lot of I think growing up immediately out of high school, doing a lot of top 40 bands. I mean, like I was saying, the era that I got out of high school in 1974, every song on the radio had guitar stuff, whether it was Difficult, Steely Dan, Led Zeppelin. I mean, there was this great, every song had a great guitar solo. So I had to cop a lot of different styles, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I get bored with myself quite easily. So I'm always in search of something that's a little bit tweaky. I've always loved players like Amos Garrett or Jay Graydon that could do these most outlandish, weird things and still make them, you know, work. I like the element of surprise. I like original stuff. I don't know. I think I'm the first person to get bored. So I encourage all my students always to transcribe. You know, that's the biggest thing. The fact that I had to sit there and learn all those solos by different players kind of gave me at least a grasp on different styles, whether it was jazz or blues or reggae at the time or whatever was popular. So that's probably a lot of it. But there's also, you know, my brother was a classical musician. He conducted the Montgomery Symphony Orchestra for 40 years, and he knows everything. And one thing I know that about, there's tablature and there's a lot of guitar music, but there's not a lot of real detailed notation for all the subtleties that a guitar could do. Because you and I both know how my little brother never played guitar, but he could pick it up and just bang out stuff and make it sound good. It was joyful noise. And the cool thing about guitar is you can do so many nuanced things with it that it kind of goes unnotated or unnoticed a lot. So
A lot of the stuff
kind
that you're playing is very hard to notate.
Well, but there's little things that I always notice. I was picked up with, like when I hear like a Larry Carlton lick, for instance. He would do something that was just, you could tweak your ear, all the little stuff to tweak my ear. And I remember I met Larry one time because his tech knew about me years ago and said, hey, Larry's trying to get into pedals. And at the time, I just gotten a new pedal board. So I went out to the studio and I was still starstruck. And I saw, and I think he was recording with Foreplay at the time. But there was the guitar. There was the iconic 335 that he'd use in all those songs. And I said, man, is that the guitar where you played like all that Joni Mitchell stuff? He goes, yeah. And he picked it up. He goes, help me, I think I'm falling. He does that 1-6-9 chord, you know, it's so beautiful. It's like, And the way he raked that, that's where the beauty is, you know. It's
Amazing.
not in learning the dots on the page, you know. So it's all those little, and that's, you know, you as a teacher, I'm sure, do the same thing. You try to encourage the student to sing along with their playing.
Alan, I have to tell you this,
it.
though. So I've only been, didn't mean to interrupt, I've only been to the Baked Potato one time. I went there with Tim Pierce. It was back in I think 2018.
To see Larry.
To see Larry. And so Tim and I sat at this table right in front of where he was going to stand. And the guitar was right there on the stand. And I said to Tim, that can't be the guitar, could it? And he's like, I think it might be.
Well, Larry, he's interesting. I know Travis, his son, very well. So I knew Larry a little bit because I won the scholarship. I got to hang out with him a little bit. And I've always, give him all sorts of accolades because he, to me, is like, he was that guy who just did all this stuff, whether it was, not only Steely Dan, but all the Crusaders stuff and the Michael Frank stuff and the Joni Mitchell stuff. That's what I was listening to the other day on the plane. That's just the way he would, he would interpret her vocals. He was a real good. I think he listened to her lyrics, and he definitely he did things like these kind of little things with a volume pedal. It was just that's when All Claws Withdrawn or whatever song she's describing the way she does, using her lyrics. He would just compliment her stuff. So my point I was going to get to is that I know Travis really well, and Travis says, he doesn't even practice anymore. He fishes. He wants to bass. He lives in Nashville and he fishes all the time. Yeah. I don't care about the mistakes. And I even tell my students that I don't care about mistakes. It's the music you make between the mistakes that matters. And Larry's the same way. I don't care if he's having a good night or bad night, but when he picks up a guitar and just goes, that famous, it's just like, that's the sound from the Donald Fagen records. And it was his touch. I was going to say before, but he and Travis have this in common. I knew Travis before I knew he was Travis Carlton. He used to come in my open counseling at MI when I'd be playing with my little loop, and we had guys who'd come in and jam with me. And Travis just always used to love coming in and sitting with me. And he had just a great time feel.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
And that's what Larry has too. I mean, all that, the classic stuff with Steely Dan is not only like I say, there's like so many other factors that go into it. Time is a big thing that I try to preach to students, but it's just his touch and how long he holds the notes. It's not just when he hits them. To me, as having my own band for the last 20 years or whatever, Travis was the guy but when I find
Travis is a bass player. Explain
Travis is
that.
Larry-
he's,
is
one,
Larry's-
he's one of the best bass players.
yeah, he's
the
just
world.
meat and potatoes,
Amazing.
and he's young. He's probably 45 years old now, but he's a historian. He knows so much about whether it's Keith Jarrett or the rhythm section from Philadelphia back, and he knows everything. He's a really student of history of music history, but he's a great player, and he's got the point is that he has that same musical touch that his dad had, and. Probably to blow my own horn a little bit, my favorite comment I've had said about me is somebody says, I heard one note and I could tell it was you. And that makes me, that to me kind of hits a little deeper than, hey, you played really fast, dude, or you're loud. You're really loud, dude. Thanks, dude. You're pretty damn loud. But yeah, I mean, so Travis has that. Robin has that. A lot of players, Michael Landau has that really special touch that I love a lot. So I can't remember what the question was, but
I don't even think I asked you a question,
You asked me
Alan.
that?
But I will ask you a question.
okay.
Alan, why don't you play another song?
does anybody ever turn to you go, that's the stupidest question I've ever heard in my life, Rick Beato?
They should.
They should. All right, sure. Which
Why
one
don't
should
you
we
do the
do
fast
here?
one?
The fast one? The one, Blithe, Spirit? Great Jimmy Johnson here. Oh, shucks. Can you
Amazing.
pipe in like a large crowd?
Amazing.
You know, it's a thing. When I'm in music school and I have all these students learning theory and stuff, you know, I sometimes as a challenge ask them, I said, hey, if you really want a challenge, write me a good song, not with those 14 chords you just used, but try to write a good song with 3 or 4 chords. Because to me, the stuff that gets me teared up and thinking the most, when I get nostalgic and like on the plane here listening to Joni Mitchell's Hissing of the Summer Lawns, that whole record is great. And it's not because it's difficult chord changes, which I guess they kind of are a little deep, you know, but it's all the jazz musicians who brought pop sensibilities or appreciated the beauty of simplicity that make that record so great. I mean, like I was saying before, there's not a utilitarian, you know, function. You know, there's a lot of bands you can hear great songs as you've done in your stuff, where whatever it is you do over there. No, in your channel, you know, you talk about what makes this song great, and there's a drummer playing. You know, we don't. It's a great song, but the drummer could have been anybody, or the bass player could have been anybody, more or less. I mean, they're kind of just playing time. But on the Joni Mitchell stuff, in that particular record, in that era of time with maybe Steely Dan too, all the players are just bringing so much to the game. I mean, I listened to Victor Feldman or Robin Ford or Wilton Felder, or I mean, all the guys are just playing such, and Larry Carlton, especially on that, is just like, and the expressiveness of her lyrics and stuff, that must have been the golden age of music that I don't know will ever happen again. Because that's special, and I don't know why I started down this road. What was I talking about? Oh, about the simplicity, how the effect that simple chords can have.
Now, when you were warming up, you had you doing a drop D thing that had some beautiful. Speaking of beautiful chords,
I mean, I have a lot of respect for guys like John Leventhal. I love his stuff.
Great player.
He uses like a lot of open drops. It's a C tuning.
Yeah.
That he uses a lot, like a low C and then a low G. I think then the rest. Then he capos it up and just. He's wonderful. And his production
I just
values.
listened to him this morning, actually.
His production values are just. I mean, I love that one Sean Colvin record. I just can listen to over and over again forever. Yeah. In lieu of being able to understand that stuff, I just can maybe get away with a drop D tuning at most. And to me, but if you know what you're doing, I mean, you can get a lot of nice chords that you wouldn't normally be able to get that low bass note in, of course. And I've written a lot of stuff. 'Cause I sit around with acoustic guitar and I'm writing songs a lot, then I end up with a low D tuning a lot. So I love that sound. Beautiful, I think, you know, that kind of low stuff. This is what I was playing for you earlier, I think. Low D just gives you a whole nother timbre. And actually, I think that's even I also have a guitar in the house tuned down to E flat for the same reason, because even though you're playing the regular D chord in E flat, it sounds different.
Sounds.
Yeah, it's a different timbre to your ears, which you probably know. You have perfect pitch, or is it your son that has perfect pitch?
His son.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some friends who have perfect pitch. It bothers them to hear anything, even if it's like, you know, they'd hear radio stations would play things faster just to get more plays in, and it'd drive them nuts. Doesn't drive me nuts. It just feels different. Like in Jimi Hendrix stuff, all the tuning it down only a half step makes a huge difference, I think, in the feel of the chord. So drop D gives you all that stuff as long as you know.
What's a problem like is common amongst your students?
A common problem is people paint themselves into boxes, and they always come to me and say, "Hey, Alan, I'm bored with myself. How do I get out of playing these pentatonic boxes?" So I have a few exercises to do that. One is it sounds silly, and actually Kurt Rosenwinkel, I saw the other day, he must have ripped this off from me. I'm kidding, Kurt didn't rip anything out. But he has a similar exercise in that I just take one particular mode, and it's important to stay in one mode or one scale, let's just say. Find the lowest note on your guitar and the highest note on your guitar, and find one mode that both fits in. And the idea is to crawl laterally through the fretboard and never go into any of those patterns that we learned in school.
Okay.
So like E dominant 7, because that would E mixolydian is totally random, and then come back down. But paying attention never to go into one of your learned patterns.
Yeah.
And this way, you do that a few times, and you end up getting these little synapses, these little connecting places that you didn't realize were there. Or, oftentimes I'll have a student, a lot of times they have the ideas themselves, they don't realize it. And I'll say, well, play me your favorite lick, or something like that. And they'll think of something real hard, and they'll go, I go, okay, stop there, okay? Can you do that over the fretboard? And so I turn it into an exercise where they have to go, something like that. But it can be something not that, it can be something, and try to take that everywhere in the right key. And that challenges them. So it's like a daily challenge just to open up the fretboard to see all the intervals. So if you're in the mindset and you have an idea to go, or I can go. This is because rhythmically the idea comes first. That's it's nanosecond before you actually have to stick it to a scale. So those are a few of my little exercises I give them. I have lots of them that I have them work on. And then you can do something as simple. And Joe DiOrio used to do this also. He would say, play the same lick, but just don't use the G string. And you go, what? You go, well, I want to hear the same, but it's the same motif, but it's just like skipping the string. So sometimes things as simple as that can be a whole week's practice routine,
Alan, why don't you play another song?
Okay.
Alan, that's amazing.
This is fun to hang out with you.
Okay, so Alan, tell people how they can hear your music. Follow Alan on Instagram first of all.
Well, you can find my music on Spotify. CD Baby, you can actually
Purchase a CD
I
for
don't
those
think
of
they
you
do that
that
anymore. I don't think they do that anymore.
Okay.
But you can hear it on Spotify.
Okay.
I think you can just YouTube. I think all the stuff's on YouTube thanks to CD Baby. I have like 6 CDs out, and the new one is called The Good Fight.
Well,
So it's out there. It's easy to find.
I'll put the link in the description so people
Thanks
can
so much,
find you. I'll
man.
put your Instagram in there and everything.
Great.
Alan,
It's
great.
nice to see you.
Great to have you.
Let's
About
go hop in
time.
the pool.
Let's do it.
All right. It's only 13 degrees outside. Thanks, man.
And I'll see you next time I come to LA.
Yes, you will. Thanks, man. So
Thanks,
much.
Alan.
My pleasure.